Today on Alabama Unfiltered, we talk with Congressman Mo Brooks, and we kind of cover it all. We talk about the assassination attempt on his life several years ago. We talk about what's Mo's favorite color. We talk about this current Senate race that is just heating up and going to a runoff on June 21st. And we cover lots of other things as well. So stick around.
Welcome into Alabama Unfiltered this week. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Beeson. Allison Sinclair is with me. So is Amy Beth Shaver. We got a special guest, Mo Brooks. But before that, make sure that you go to all the places that you usually read or listen to your podcast. You can check them out at Apple or Spotify. Don't forget this program is also funded, powered, ran by 1819 News. So go to their website, 1819news.com. Sign up for the daily newsletter. You'll definitely want that. It's like the newspapers used to be when they were real, and it would give you the information you need to know about what's going on in Alabama and around the country. So let's get started, ladies. How are y'all?
Great.
We're good. How are you?
Fantastic. Congressman Mo Brooks, how are you?
Doing well. Started in Washington, D.C. this morning. Got up at 3:50 Central Time. Baseball practice at 4:50. Got on a plane. This will be my second or third event today here in Alabama.
3:50?
3:50.
Is that a stutter?
Central Time.
3:50 Central Time.
Okay. Wow. So how are things looking at baseball practice?
Looking good. I hope to still play at first base. Last year I was the starting first baseman, played the whole game, which is unusual. No errors in my career as a congressional baseball player.
Which is outstanding.
No errors today in practice during the fielding practice. I left before the hitting practice because, those planes do leave without you. Right. So I had to get to the airport in order to be here.
So who usually wins the baseball game, the congressional baseball game?
Well, the Democrats normally win, but we got a real good deal. The only deal we got out of the Biden administration is he hired into the White House their ace pitcher, Cedric Richmond, who is a college pitcher and still kind of young.
Right.
And now that he's gone, last year we beat him, I think it was 13-12. So,
Okay.
And it's real baseball. It's in the Washington Nationals Major League Baseball Stadium. We'll have 20 to 30,000 people show up.
Wow.
And it raises about $1.5 million more or less for various charities. And it's a really good deal, except for when you got a socialist assassin who wants to kill you.
Right.
Okay, except for that, it's been a lot of
We're going to
fun.
talk
Really
about
good.
that today.
So that's
sure.
why y'all were safe at baseball practice, because the socialist assassin was after Supreme Court justice today.
Well, that could be a part of it, but a big part of it is now we have a lot of firepower with us, Capitol Police.
Oh, do you?
It used to be that security was just kind of random.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when the assassin tried to take us out, and I was one of his primary targets, he had a target list in his pocket.
Right, I remember
with
that.
my physical description. There were 6 of us that he wanted to kill as his primary targets. We had 2 Capitol Police officers there by accident because Steve Scalise, being a part of leadership when we were in the majority, he got protection. And if he hadn't been at practice that day, it'd have been us armed with baseballs, baseball gloves, baseball bats against a guy who was shooting us.
I didn't know that. I was under the impression the whole time that those 2 guards were there.
They were
Just
there
because
to
they were
protect
there.
Steve
They were-
Scalise. And he happened to be there at that particular practice. He doesn't come to all the practices. None of us do because we've got other commitments.
Right.
So we were very, very lucky that this socialist assassin was a Yankee. He didn't know how to shoot right.
It's true.
I mean, literally, he was shooting
squirrels
like
his whole life. Y'all be
Chuck
done.
Connors and the
Right.
rifleman shooting from the hip.
Right.
And he didn't scout beforehand to figure out that there was only one way in and one way out of the ball field. If you've ever seen the movie Remember the Titans,
Yes.
okay, it's their baseball field, their high school baseball field that we
Okay.
practiced on over in Virginia. And if he'd figured out that there's only one way in and out, then he could have boxed us in the baseball field. He could have walked in and done his dirty deed.
Who hired that rookie?
Or if he hadn't been so dumb, he'd have just shot off the lock at the third base gate.
Right.
But he didn't do that either.
He didn't do
so
that
shooting
either.
from the hip, he doesn't scout. I'm just thankful that he wasn't a Southern hunter or a military guy.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
you're
the
right about
truth.
We
that.
got lucky in that regard. But now we have a lot of protection there that goes out in a good distance in every direction. And so the security is just fantastic. Capitol Police are doing a good job of trying to prevent a reoccurrence of that.
Right.
Well, we are going to get to gun control later on, which that's a great because not all of us have been shot at.
Yeah,
or
the media
targeted.
came right after me with that. Now, what do you think of gun
Right.
control?
Of course
and
they
that
did.
kind of stuff.
I
I
gotta
want
know
to
the
know what the
original
line
question.
is, though. I know, not that I bet on anything, but what's the betting line between Republicans and Democrats in the baseball game?
Well, it's
Because
gotta be-
surely there's a line.
It's got to be close to 50-50
Really?
because last year was a 13-12 score.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Who's the most fun teammate of yours?
The most fun, Probably Kevin Brady over at second base, but we have a lot of characters.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of really good people who are on the congressional baseball team that can liven things up with some sharp wit. But Kevin at second base, he's, of course, he's very, very smart intellectually. He's a good fielder, and he tries to keep us on our toes. Probably the most edgy fun guy is Rodney Davis at catcher. He will use all sorts of profanity when the public's not around. Now he's doing it in a good-natured sense, okay? Trying to rib us, keep us loose, and all that kind of. You know how catchers are.
Yeah.
They feel kind of bossy back there behind the plate, and he does a real good job of being bossy.
So I got to know, does Tim Burchett play?
Oh, he's good. He plays at first base where I play.
So you've edged him out as a starter. Well done. Well done.
Tim likes to quip that however many first basemen there are, like if there's 3, he's the third stringer. If there's 4, he's the fourth stringer.
He was the very first campaign I ever worked on in Tennessee.
Oh, he's a character.
He's
he's from Tennessee,
Senate.
Knoxville area.
And
he's a wonderful,
congressman.
wonderful individual. And he's somewhat comical at first base. Like this morning, there was a little bit of pop fly practice. And of course, Tim's the one, the ball's up. It's probably about 5 feet behind him. So he's backing up right on his derriere.
Of course.
Fortunately, the ball did not hit him in the head or anything. It bounced on the ground.
He didn't catch it.
Oh, no, he didn't catch it.
Does he wear his Carhartt jacket?
Bingo. You remember the Carhartt
Does
jacket?
he really?
He does. Yeah, we call him Carhartt.
Wow. Okay, so
he's like the most good old boy.
Oh, he is super. He is.
Yeah.
He's
We're gonna
got a
have to
sharp
watch
wit.
this.
We're going to have to watch the game. Maybe the television.
Well, it is on national TV.
Yeah.
Last year it was on 2 different nationwide broadcasts. One was C-SPAN, and if I recall correctly, the other one was Fox Sports 1, FS1.
That's fun. Okay, we're going to have a hangout and watch.
Now, I'll tell
We
you
are
a little
gonna
bit
do
of
it.
fun, okay? We had one guy, Anthony Gonzalez, who's our center fielder, and he used to be an NFL wide receiver, and he's pretty young still. So he hits one in the gap, and he goes all the way around. They call him an antelope, okay? Right. And I hit a little squibby grounder to third base where John Ossoff is, senator from Georgia, and he throws it into right field. And so I'm going around as fast as I'm 67 years old at the time, going as fast as I can from first to second, go all the way to third, make it a third base error. And they refer to me as trucking it. Look at that old guy trucking it. Anthony Gonzalez is running like a gazelle. Mo Brooks, he's trucking it.
Good old Alabama boy trucking it.
Oh, that's
Well,
good.
speaking of Alabama boy, tell us a little bit, because I know we don't have too long and I want to be efficient because we have lots to get to. Tell us about your upbringing. You know, a lot of what we hear, you're not from here, but you've pretty much lived here the whole time.
I've lived here longer than the other 2 candidates in the race put together.
That also means you're old.
Wise.
My heart, it's just been stabbed.
Means wise. So you
Okay.
were born in New Hampshire.
To quote Ronald Reagan,
No.
I will try not to take
Charleston.
advantage of their youth
My
and
tramp was
inexperience.
born in
Exactly.
New Hampshire. I can't keep up with all these
I was born in
non-Alabama.
Charleston at the age of 7 or 8, moved to the state of Alabama, and have lived here for 6 decades.
Okay. So yeah.
And are you
qualify.
still in Southeast Huntsville?
That is correct. Still live in Southeast Huntsville. Grew up in Southwest Huntsville. So I've been in South Huntsville now for about 6 decades. And a shameless plug, according to U.S. News and World Report, the #1 best place to live in the United States of America,
Yep.
in the Tennessee Valley in the state of Alabama.
Yep. And Huntsville is way overtaking Birmingham.
Hey, and the rest
It's
of
an amazing
Alabama,
place.
whatever I can do to make the rest of Alabama the same, I'll do my best.
Oh,
man. There you
The
go.
Tennessee Valley that
You
I've
went to #1 in
We
6
love the Tennessee
decades, so that was
Valley.
good. That was good work.
The part of the state that I represent has led the state of Alabama in economic prosperity over the last decade. More jobs created in my congressional district than any other in the state of Alabama. Soaring incomes. You know, if you put the right team together, you can do some really good things.
Yeah. So went to high school. Then you went to Duke.
Grissom High School.
Grissom High School. You went to Duke. Graduated in 3 years.
3 years, double major, economics and political science. Highest honors, they call it distinction, and a major in economics.
And then
And by the way, I'm one of only about 4 or 5 congressmen or senators who has an economics background, which helps explain why the economic policy emanating from D.C. is so bad, why we're suffering from an 8.5% inflation rate. We don't have enough people to understand basic free enterprise.
what do you? Janet Yellen is awesome. Are you serious? What do you mean? She understands inflation so well.
Perfectly.
Maybe you could do a little 101 with her.
And some of those economic degrees we don't count, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez claims that she has an economics degree. I think we need to remove the accreditation for that particular university if that's an example of their economic output.
Well, she studied some other economy, not ours for sure. But so I didn't realize we were going to be so easily distracted. Like we're very. This is kind of fun. Look at Mo Brooks going along.
Ropes
yeah, it
before
is.
the
This
show.
is great.
It's amazing what 2 cans of Mountain Dew will do for you after you
See,
get up at 3:50 a.m. in the morning.
Well, it makes for great podcasting. So this is fun. But then you ended up at Alabama. Where did you meet Martha?
Well, it was a blind date at Duke University, and if you got time, I'll give you a little story about it.
No, we don't have a ton of time.
Yeah, we
but
got a couple minutes. Give it to us.
Well,
All
we
right.
need to know.
Here is one of my fraternity brothers has a gorgeous babe from California, okay? And that's the way he thought of her. And she was Martha's roommate. And they ended up getting married, Bob Frizzell and Kim. And so Martha's supposed to go on a blind date to this fraternity party. And Kim looks over at Martha and says, "How come you're not getting ready?" "Well, the guy who's supposed to pick me up never called on the blind date." And Kim calls up Bob Frizzell, who's like a 6'4" linebacker type. "If Martha's not going, I'm not going." So Bob Frizzell goes, I gotta get this girl on this date. And how can I find a date for this Martha lady? Who at this late date, this is the day of the party, would not have a date? Mo Brooks.
Mo Brooks would not have a day.
I was focused on intramural sports and academics. Okay.
Right.
So I rarely dated women. No offense, but you guys scared me to death. You ladies. Okay.
We're
Just handfuls.
We scare each other.
We do.
When I was in high school and in college, all I saw was trouble.
Right.
And so Bob Frizzell comes up to me and says, "I've got this date with this girl that I am head over heels over, and she won't go to this party tonight unless this roommate of hers has a date, because the blind date never called her. So will you do it?" I said, yes, sir. And so about 7 weeks or so later, we decided to get married.
And you've been married for how long
awesome.
We've been married for 46 years, 4 wonderful kids, 4 wonderful kids-in-law, all gainfully employed, all doing super well, none on welfare, and 13 wonderful grandchildren.
Wow.
So all
13.
because
Wow.
some fool neglected to call Martha when he was
What a
supposed to
loser.
for a blind
Ugh.
date. Now, he didn't know her, so it wasn't anything to do with not liking her or liking her.
Yeah, because he missed out.
He missed out.
She's super nice.
I mean, look at what you.
His
wow.
loss was my gain.
She's a sweetheart for sure.
Oh, she's brighter than me. She ended up being a Phi Beta Kappa equivalent at the University of Alabama. She transferred there after we got married in economics. I think their Phi Beta Kappa equivalent is called Beta Gamma Sigma or something, all these Greek letters.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And the neatest thing is here she is in accounting, and she got to work on Bear Bryant's tax returns. And I thought that was real cool.
No, she didn't.
She did
Okay.
with Senna and Company in
Wow.
Tuscaloosa.
So forget being married to a congressman. She got to do
That's
The
right.
Bear
Bears.
Bryant's.
Now that is star status.
That is amazing. That
really
is
is.
amazing.
And she got to meet him, of course, during that process, getting those tax
I
returns
mean, that's
right.
just basically, that's all you need to say to people. It's
Yeah.
like, she did his
She's
tax
super cool.
returns and
Right.
done. Check. It's over.
So when did you get into politics and why?
Got into politics in 1982. I was dissatisfied with the direction of our state. I believe a lot of people think that Alabama can and should do better, particularly in education. Ran as a Republican. At that time, we were outnumbered 136
That's
Democrats
impressive.
to 4 Republicans. Nobody thought that a Republican could win. There were
Right.
none elected in the northern third of the state of Alabama in the legislature. And dipped my toe in the waters and somehow was able to prevail despite the Democrats rigging 25% of the voting machines to register votes for everybody on the ballot except for Mo Brooks.
It was old school rigging.
That's 11 out of 45 machines that they rigged. In the primary Republican box in the district, the big one, there were 5 machines. None of them would register a vote for Mo Brooks. It was the old lever where you pull the lever and the X
so
pops
like
up,
you'd pull
or
and
you
it
pull the
wouldn't
straight
go?
ticket and all the X's would show except for
Right.
Mo Brooks. Some voter fraud specialists had locked those machines so it would register votes for everybody but me. Ultimately, at this one location where none of the 5 machines would register votes for me, the poll workers would periodically announce, hey, if you want to vote for Mo Brooks, go sign your name on the wall. So you lost your secret ballot right, but at least you could vote for Mo Brooks. And somehow, despite that, we still won with 57%.
That is
Wow.
So you know a little bit about
Unbelievable.
voter fraud.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. I kind of keep track of it.
Well, good thing it wasn't widespread, though.
Yeah, it was all targeted at me.
Exactly.
I don't know why that didn't make me feel any better.
That's right.
wow.
But the Democrats were monolithic. They had all the power, and they took advantage of it. So that was my first
Back in
introduction to
1982.
politics.
Wow.
Yes.
So some people think that you being in politics so long is a negative. They'll call you a career politician.
Well, they're wrong, but go ahead.
I didn't say I agreed. I just said that's what they say. And
You know,
and
you
so
don't-
what's your response to that? And also, are you for term limits?
You know, what happens in government is you have responsibilities.
Right.
And how you should focus on whether you like or dislike a person is based on how they have voted or are going to vote. By way of example, my having been elected a significant number of times carrying the Republican banner, that gives you an idea that people must like my performance as a public servant. Otherwise, they wouldn't have elected me to public office 14 times as a legislator, as a county commissioner, now as the United States Congressman. The average reelection rate exceeds 75%, which ought to tell people, hey, maybe a lot of these dishonest attack ads by Katie Britt aren't true. How could I have gotten elected one time, much less 14 times, if there was any truth to any of this garbage that they're throwing out and throwing up against the wall to see if it will stick? It helps me better understand with what the Katie Britt team's been doing, why Mike Durant called her corrupt, okay? What she's doing is dishonest, and she ought to be held accountable for it, not rewarded for it, but we'll see what the voters decide in that regard. But the main thing is, you don't really know how someone's going to operate, and this is very serious when they start at the United States Senate level. This is a big deal. By way of example, when Doug Jones was put into office from Alabama, that was our key vote, swing vote, on whether we could repeal Obamacare in 2018 after John McCain died. Because we got John Kyle appointed to replace John McCain when John McCain died after doing that on the Senate floor on Obamacare. That was a vote. So all of a sudden we had the votes to pass Obamacare, except Alabama sent Doug Jones.
Sent Doug Jones. That's right.
That cost us the repeal of socialized medicine. That bad mistake by the voters. So with me, you have some degree of certainty that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do because I've got a voting record. You can look it up with border security. You can look at Numbers USA, A+ grade every single year on border security. You can look it up on the Second Amendment right to bear arms. Look at NRA, Gun Owners of America, National Association of Gun Rights. They all have endorsed me, straight A record with NRA and GOA on Second Amendment issues. On pro-life issues, you can look at National Right to Life. If you're pro-life, you know I'm going to be solid with you because I've had a straight A record every single year I've been in the United States Congress. So I consider this an invaluable asset, particularly in the context of at this level when you got tons of money. I'll tell you what Katie Britt's doing. Her team has run polls to find out what the public wants to hear and have told her if she wants to get elected, you got to parrot this back. And that's exactly what she's doing. And she flip-flops as the circumstances warrant. And I can give examples of that if you wish. But she flip-flops as the circumstances warrant. You really have no idea what you're going to get. It's a crapshoot, a roll of the dice, a gamble. And I would submit that now is not the time to gamble with America's future if you're a Republican or if you're a conservative. Now, if you're a liberal, there's no gamble, okay? Vote for Katie Britt. Don't vote for Mo Brooks. After all, she's being supported by the Alabama Democratic Party. That ought to tell you that perhaps she doesn't think like us Republicans.
What do you think about the tweet that came out that Wade Perry that said
I've got
he
it
thinks
right
the
here.
world of her?
Yes.
And
This is
How
from
much help she was.
Alabama Democratic Party Executive Director Wade F. Perry, who also has firsthand experience concerning Doug Jones' election because he was the campaign manager for Doug Jones in 2017.
Oh, wow.
So he's
And this is what he said.
He's right there in there.
Now,
Right
now
there
if
in the
you're a
web.
Republican, this ought to scare you a little bit that the Democrats, the liberal Democrats, the socialist Democrats think so highly of Katie Britt. This is what she said, quote, "Yep, she's pretty awesome." Now, when a Democrat calls a candidate awesome, that's normally not a good thing if you're a Republican or a
Right.
conservative.
They don't call you that.
No, they don't. They call me a lot of things, but not awesome. Now, here's the second sentence. Super helpful to us in the Doug Jones thing in 2017. Now, keep in mind, this is Doug Jones' campaign manager saying Katie Britt was super helpful to electing Doug Jones.
Well, what I liked about it wasn't even he didn't have to say the election. He's like the Doug Jones thing, because he knew there was a thing there. The Republicans.
Well, everybody knew there was a thing.
But it was Republicans that shot us in the foot.
Well, it was Richard Shelby and Katie Britt who devised and implemented a strategy to take votes from the Republican nominee, which elected Doug Jones. And by the way, after the election, Doug Jones publicly thanked them for doing that.
Right.
And I've got that quote too, if you want me to read it into the record. But continuing, and showed real leadership in supporting the gas tax increase for needed infrastructure improvements. She was the leader of the gas tax hike. And then continuing, next sentence, I think the world of her. Then the next sentence, and this one is real interesting too. Most Dems understand she just has to say certain things, end quote, to win a Republican primary. So if the Democrats can figure out that she's spinning a tale, that she's just parroting back to us what her polling data says we want to hear, the Democrats can figure that out to the point where they're giving an open door to Democrats voting for her in the Republican primary. Don't you think the Republicans should figure it out?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And how many times in Montgomery, that's my experience, as you know, Mo, have you heard people say, just say what you have to say? Just say what you have to say. Just say what they want to hear. But I'm like, don't you mean to do this? No, we're just going to say what we have to say. So it was that sentence that drove me the craziest.
Now, I've got also an article by Doug Jones, including Doug Jones, in which Doug Jones is thanking this strategy for getting him elected.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, I've not either.
I'll be happy to read it to you. It's from the National Journal Daily back in 2019. So this race wasn't a factor.
Right.
The 2017 race was in the rearview mirror. Here's a quote from that article. Senator Richard Shelby's rejection of Moore and claim that he had written in a distinguished Republican for the special election to replace then Attorney General Sessions provided fodder for Doug Jones's TV, digital, and robocall ad campaigns. It was a message to the crucial demographic we were trying to attract, moderate GOP voters and independents. Jones wrote in Bending Towards Justice, if we could not get those votes over to our side, having them write in or stay home was a vote in our favor. The Shelby anti-endorsement was very important, Jones said in the interview, given the narrow outcome. More voters wrote in on alternative than comprised the margin between the two nominees in an election decided by fewer than 22,000 votes, end quote. So, we had people who were kicked off the ballot by the Republican Party in 2020, and I think also this year, for supporting Doug Jones, helping him get elected. Kicked off the ballot. They were denied ballot access by the Alabama Republican Party. Yeah. I don't know how they're going to handle this, but to me, the evidence is overwhelming and compelling that she helped Doug Jones get elected, as evidenced by the campaign manager of Doug Jones specifically saying so, as evidenced by what we saw with our own eyes in TV in December of 2017, where Richard Shelby's on national TV doing all sorts of news releases saying, write in somebody else. Don't vote for the Republican nominee, which, as Doug Jones says, that's a vote for Doug Jones. Right. Every time you take one of those off of the GOP nominees column, that's a vote for Doug Jones. And Katie Britt was the chief of staff implementing that strategy for Richard Shelby.
And they split hairs by saying, we didn't support Doug Jones. We just chopped the legs out of the Republican nominee, which is supporting them, but they like that whole lawyer talk.
They used the lawyer talk, the legalese, and the way they're using it is, we did not encourage people to vote for Doug Jones. Right. But if you encourage people who are against Doug Jones to throw away their vote, as Doug Jones says, each one of those is a vote for Doug Jones because it's one less for his competitor. And if my memory serves me correctly, there were over 30,000 people who voted, went to the polls and voted and wrote in somebody else pursuant to the request of Richard Shelby and his chief of staff, Katie Britt.
Yeah.
Now, are we going to be Republicans or not, folks?
Right.
Well, it'll be really
if not, let's just be a social club.
To see what the party does about this, because there's not a quote. Well, I mean, Wade Perry is the chairman of the Democratic Party.
Well, executive director.
Executive director, and he was, but like, there's no, as far as I know, nobody will come on the record. He wouldn't even answer 1819 when they.
Well, this is on the record. It's in writing.
It is, but then, his account was private.
And then they'll say, well, you don't know. Where's the paper trail? Well, there's not going to be a paper trail, the whole 9 yards. That's what'll happen.
And then there's just a few other things, like with that you talk about her tax that she's voted for several taxes just seems to be out of line with like traditional conservative values and platform.
Well, she's known as Common Core Katie. Okay, that's her nickname on the Common Core issue. And there are a lot of other moral values issues where she is a part of the BCA, the Masters of the Universe crowd. And what does she do? She parrots along with them, okay?
He-Man. Do you remember He-Man and She-Ra?
Yes.
Masters of the Universe.
So how about this? Because what you're saying right now is very interesting. It's not just in regards to the gas tax, but it's also in regard to Common Core and the BCA. Can you connect the dots for our listeners and viewers and help them understand her position at the BCA with Common Core and how that's going? How has that affected? Because people say, well, she's never been elected before. How in the world did that affect us? Why does that even matter?
That she's never been elected before, that gets back to it being a crapshoot. It's a gamble.
Right.
Look, I have served in public office a lot, okay? And I've served in the United States Congress for the last 12 years. And after a while, you can figure out who the rhinos are. You can figure out who the establishment members are. You can figure out by observing them who you can rely on and who you can't.
Right.
And Katie Britt is a rhino establishment person that you can't rely on if you're fighting for the principles that we claimed we believed in when we got elected. You recognize them from that experience. And I can spot her a mile away in the opposite camp. You can follow the money trail with Mitch McConnell pouring millions of dollars into attacking my reputation and Mike Durant's reputation. Same thing with Richard Shelby. He's as rhino as they get. Okay, I'll give you an example. He voted for the legislation that made it illegal for our voter registrars to require proof of citizenship when a non-citizen demands to be registered to vote. The law should be the exact opposite.
Right.
It should require proof of citizenship, but Richard Shelby voted to make it illegal for our voter registrars to require proof of citizenship. That's a horrible policy.
Right.
Americans should be controlling the destiny of our nation. And I'll give you another example with Richard Shelby. He's got a lot of buildings named after him. He's been very good at demanding that the buildings be named after him when he comes up with the money. But can you name a person who's more responsible, living in the United States of America today, more responsible for our $30 trillion debt that is mortgaging our country's future? I can't. Can you name someone more responsible for this debt burden that we have? I mean, look, he's been there since the 1970s. He's been an appropriator. He's been spending all this money that we don't have to borrow to get, and can't afford to pay back.
Right.
Biden's been there a long time too.
He has.
Richard Shelby has his protege that he's trying to bequeath the United States Senate position, and I say bequeath quite literally, as if it's his instead of the people's. So do you think he would be supporting somebody who doesn't agree with his philosophy of government?
Right.
This is a good time to stop. To stop and say that we have invited Katie Britt on to the podcast. We have not heard back from their camp yet. We've reached out twice, so we have reached out to give her a chance to come on.
We're trying to be fair.
Trying to be fair,
And the idea was to have both and be balanced, and hopefully we still can.
Well, while we're talking about Katie Britt, there's a reason why Donald Trump Jr. has referred to her as Alabama's Liz Cheney. And that's not a good descriptive term in Trump world or amongst Republicans.
For someone to call me.
Absolutely
well,
not.
the Trump team has done their homework. There's a reason why Donald Trump has not endorsed Katie Britt. Okay, right now he's neutral, but there's a reason why he doesn't like her. And probably part of that reason is a quote by President Trump. And I don't know if you've heard this quote by President Trump regarding Katie Britt. But this is it. Katie Britt, quote, is not in any way qualified and is certainly not what our country needs or not what Alabama wants, end quote. So the Trump team has said, to Katie Britt. And she's groveling for that endorsement and has been for many months now. We'll see how it plays out. But the fact that she's a pawn of Mitch McConnell, that also doesn't sit well with the Donald Trump team.
So what are the chances? Apparently Trump saw your Fox News interview, which if you haven't watched it, we need to put it in the show notes. On fire. That's like, I just wanted to be like, preach, that I think you said a lot of things. And honestly, even as the product of a single parent, a single mother raised child, myself, what you said is true. There is a breakdown of the family unit. There is a breakdown of traditional family roles and the way God designed it. And I was not offended by what you said at all. If you haven't listened to it, you need to go back and listen to it. aside from that, you mentioned a lot about the 2020 election, and apparently Donald Trump saw that and was kind of like, "Whoa, where was this Mo?" Do you?
Well, it's the same Mo I've been since November 3rd of 2020.
You just didn't get to say it all in Coleman. I don't guess it could come out.
What Mo said in Coleman was factually correct, because we were coming up to these next elections, and guess what?
We had to get players back in the game.
Absolutely.
Right. So
a lot of players had just quit. Okay, the referee had made a bad call. The umpire had made a bad call, and I played a lot of sports in my youth. And what's the first thing the coach tells you? Okay, put that bad call behind you. You got the next play. Right. Shake it off, move on. Right. And in order for us to get justice for what happened in November of 2020, we got to win the 2022 and 2024 elections. One, to fix the broken election system, and two, to have the power with which to fix the broken election system. It's as simple as that. It's like 1982 when the Democrats rigged the machines. You got to push through it, and you got to win with a big enough margin so even after they've stolen whatever votes they're going to steal, you still are on top. Right. And if that's your task, that's the task that you have to meet. So that's what I mean by looking forward. The only way to address what happened in 2020 is, by golly, take the power from the Democrats at the city level, at the county level, at the state level, and the federal government level.
Well, and I think that's what it doesn't have to be an either or. Either we focus and look back at 2020, or we move forward to 22. It needs to be a both and I think that's what you were getting at. 2020
is something to look at as a motivational tool that we're going to lose our republic if we don't fix these systemic flaws in our election system. Okay, that's what that's about.
But there was going to never be a wake up on Monday morning and Donald Trump's put back, because the system's just not going to allow that.
Well, the deadline was January the 6th. Right. After January the 6th, there is no legal way in the United States Constitution, United States Code, to change the outcome of that election. There is no legal path.
You got to do a whole bunch of impeaching and electing speaker and move this person out and move that person out, and it's just not going to happen. It's kind of like,
and it hasn't
impeaching
happened.
A liberal judge.
We're a year and a half later after the voter fraud and election theft of November 2020, and it hasn't happened.
Right.
That's because there is no legal path. I wish there was a legal path. I understand Donald Trump and his position where he wants to be reinstated perhaps, or he wants to rescind the election. If I were in his shoes, I would want that too, okay? But there's no legal way in which you can do it. Right. I wish there was, but there's not. Right. But we can win in 2022, and we can win in 2024, and we can kick the derrieres of the Democrats all over the playing field if we will get together and work like we need to work.
Absolutely.
And at the baseball game.
And at the baseball game in July.
Let's beat them in July and to get going. So let me ask this, and I've asked you this on my radio program before, that there's a number of attacks from the Brit campaign, and I'm including, their PACs, their national PACs, the Mitch McConnell
It's all
PACs.
the same.
It is all the same people with all the same goal.
There is no distinction between one and the other.
And I want you to address them, because now there's a
Pick one.
There's a big mailer coming out now that's what is
like
it?
MAGA
Mo taxes, and
that's just another big lie by the Katie Britt team. Quite frankly, this is the most brazenly dishonest campaign and candidate I have witnessed in my life in politics, and I've been engaged for 4 decades now. Brazenly dishonest, and it's why Mike Durant called him corrupt.
Right.
Okay. He said I had a big mouth. That's a whole lot better than being called corrupt. Okay.
Right.
Mike, there you go. Okay. I do talk a lot. I thought it's part of my job, but nonetheless, the taxes. They claim that I have voted for property taxes, sales taxes, and income taxes. I've supported 100 taxes. That is all 100% pure bovine excrement. Okay. Right. Zero truth to it. Right. Zero truth to it. Now, I'll give you some examples, and everybody can look this up. As a legislator, Alabama Taxpayer Defense Fund kept track of our voting records on tax increases. I was ranked number 1 out of 140 legislators in the fight against taxes and to protect family incomes. Is that consistent with someone who's voted for all these willy-nilly tax increases that they talk about? No. Number 2, Bob Riley's $1 billion tax increase referendum in 2003. You know that I opposed it because I was active in the statewide televised debates arguing against this tax increase. I'm on statewide TV.
There were only a handful of Republicans that held any office that were opposed to that because they were afraid of the machine.
It was against the governor, a Republican governor that we were fighting.
Exactly.
Now, is that consistent with someone who's voted for tax increases? And then you've got President Trump's tax cuts of 2017. I just had a significant surgery, and I had a catheter in me, and I had to travel to Washington, D.C. on an airplane in a cramped condition with a big person sitting next to me. And that's not a comfortable thing to do, but I wanted to make sure I got to Washington, D.C. to vote for that tax cut because it was that important, and we might not have had the votes to pass it in the House. And so I got there. Now, is that the position of someone who's for raising taxes? So I'm telling you, my strength is my fighting against tax increases and for protecting family incomes. And Katie Britt's weakness, number one weakness, it's also her number one policy achievement, is raising taxes.
Right.
She has publicly supported more tax increases than any Republican candidate in the state of Alabama. And if she hadn't chickened out on the debate, I'd have wrapped that around her neck because I'd have proven it too.
That's why she avoided the debate.
I mean, let's be clear. I have litigation experience as an assistant DA in Tuscaloosa, as a district attorney in Madison County, as a nationwide commercial litigator for a big company out of Wisconsin. And I know that there are opening statements and there are closing arguments, but in between, you got to have evidence. And I've got the evidence to back up everything I've just said of a factual nature. Everything. I've got the evidence to back it up. And they don't. In a debate format, that's really bad for Katie Britt and really good for Mo Brooks. Right. They read the tea leaves and they skedaddled like a cockroach who saw the light.
I want to know if she has responded. I saw that you put out a press release that you invited her to a one-topic, two-question debate. Question number one, was the 2020 election stolen? Question number two, did Donald Trump win or not? Have you heard back from their camp?
Well, it wasn't a direct message to their camp. It was indirect to the people of the state of Alabama. I assume that they have seen it.
You sent them an email.
Well, maybe my staff has.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the Facebook post, the tweets, all that kind of stuff. I have no knowledge of her having accepted a debate, either generally that the Alabama Republican Party wanted to put on. That was the first one. Or we offered a debate just limited to her attack ads to see if she can defend them. And of course she can't. She knows she can't. So she doesn't want to do them.
Well, 1819 News has reached out to your campaign and the Britt campaign about doing a debate as well. And I don't think they've heard back.
There were 3 or 4 different entities that reached out for debates. And again, she's too weak to be able to defend what has happened. She knows that what her team has been saying is false. And she doesn't want to be put in the position of me proving how false her statements are. And it would have been easy to prove. And after that debate was over with, 90% of the viewers would have voted for me because I believe 90% of the viewers believe in honesty.
I just
and the number one criteria for a public official is honesty. And this campaign absolutely does not have. And again, that's why Mike Durant called it corrupt.
I can't handle at the end of the campaign, before the primary election, all I heard was that Mike Durant won't debate. Mike Durant won't debate. Her campaign talked about it.
I happen to have that quote.
Well, you can read it because it drives me nuts. I'm like,
okay. This is Katie Britt when she is attacking Mike Durant. Okay. Direct quote out of her own mouth. Quote, to Congressman Brooks' credit, he has agreed to be a part of these just like I have, but Mike Durant has been totally radio silent. If Mike Durant wants to be the Republican Party nominee, it is especially perplexing, head-scratching, that he won't even respond to their debate invitation. I mean, what does that tell you? I think it tells you that, well, he clearly has something to hide, end quote. I agree with Katie Britt when you're talking about something to hide if you won't debate. Right. And that explains why Katie Britt will not debate. Now, you can see the flip-flop, the hypocrisy. Yeah. And she's done that on issue after issue after issue. She's done that on the Second Amendment. She's done that on pro-life. She's done it most recently on the Ukraine, just time after time after time. And I can prove what she said or did here, what she said or did there. And if you're wanting to debate Mo Brooks under those circumstances, do you cop out or do you attend? Do you want to go to your own execution? Well, she made a wise decision not to show up, but it's a bad decision for the state of Alabama.
Right. And I think like with Mike Durant, he was in the lead for so long. So I understand. I mean, there's the old philosophy. You just, if you're in the head, don't go mess up. But at some point, like Mike Durant, I think that was his downfall. He didn't get in front of the people. He didn't rebut a lot of these things. He didn't debate. And I think that's why he didn't make it to the runoff or have a better chance. I don't know if that'll happen to her. I don't know if that will happen to her. But to me, I'm like, you're about to sit at the highest level federally elected seat in Alabama, and you.
Well, basically, what do the people of Alabama know about her? I mean, Mo Brooks has a long record. All we know about Katie Britt is TV commercials.
Well, and you can look at her time at the BCA, and you can kind of tell from that and see how she's going to vote.
You don't really know. She doesn't answer questions. You don't know when she gets under stress. You don't.
No, that's a good point.
She's not been called out on this flip flop or that flip flop, and I mean, she's really unknown. She's created by an advertising campaign by
Those
Well,
marketers.
if she doesn't want to be labeled as the campaigning like Joe Biden, she better start showing
Right.
up.
Well, I mean, she's been asked to be on this program.
I know. So we're asking you, if you do not want to be labeled as the Joe Biden running for office in Alabama, then show up for a debate.
Now, wait a second. I think that's being unfair to Joe Biden because he did participate in 3 debates.
That is true.
Well, he campaigned from his
that's
basement. He campaigned from his basement.
That's true.
He
Right,
campaigned-
and that feels like that's what she's doing, and that is a precarious position because Alabamians do care about who they send to Washington.
But he
and
did
they
come out
do
of his
wanna
basement
hear.
to do 3
He
debates.
did. You're right.
Right.
You're right. He came out 3 times. I'm sorry about that.
So,
But let's not campaign from your basement. Let's show up for the people of Alabama that you
Just
say you'd like to
answer some
represent.
questions.
Yeah, I
Isn't that
mean,
it?
we
Just
just
answer
want to
some
know.
questions.
That's
She
all.
needs to answer them in a contested environment, not where people just give her a pass when she gives a false answer.
Right. An answer that was different than the one that she gave last week.
Can I give you an example with Ukraine, another one of those flip-flops?
Sure.
Can I do that?
Yeah. We've only got a couple more minutes. We're going to have to wrap it
I
up.
have so much to get to. This
So-
is
Let me just talk about
okay.
Ukraine for a
okay,
moment,
but
where
then
she's
we're having a speed round.
all right, where
Okay.
she's hammering me. This is Katie Britt, public statement in March. Quote, "We must take every available step." Let me repeat that part. "We must take every available step to give Ukrainians the defensive weaponry, equipment, technology, and vehicles needed to stand their ground, including aircraft." Quote unquote. Then, when it came to a bill that would give Ukraine $6 billion worth of weapons and another $4 billion worth of money loaned to be paid back to buy weapons, the $10 billion in toto would be paying American workers to produce those weapons. So the money's actually staying in the United States, although the munitions are going to the Ukraine. Things like the Javelin produced in Troy, Alabama, jobs in Alabama, the Stingers, whatever the munitions are. When it came time to pay for it, she did the exact opposite of "we must take every available step to help Ukraine." That's a flip-flop.
because she attacked you for voting for it.
Yeah, she waited until I voted. No matter how I voted, she was going to attack me. It
Right.
was much like Nancy Pelosi's National Defense Authorization Act that had red flag laws in it, that had termination of military personnel if they refused the vaccine in it, that had drafting our teenage daughters in it. She waited until I voted, and then she took the exact opposite position because she's got more money behind her to put out her message.
Right.
That's what I mean by flip-flops. She's inconsistent. You can't believe a word she says. I've never seen anyone this brazenly dishonest with the voters of the people of a state that she wants to represent as Katie Britt. And I've been around for quite a while, folks, as y'all know.
Right.
I've seen a lot of candidates. I've seen a lot of office holders. I've never seen anyone this brazenly misrepresent what's going on.
Can we talk about you?
Lightning round. Go for
Lightning
You
round.
gotta
Okay.
hurry, 'cause
I
you
want to
got-
tell
you got
okay,
3
I-
minutes.
okay, Katie Britt.
All right.
But here we go. Do you?
No, you go first.
Well, okay, I'll go first. Now I forget. Okay, will you vote for Mitch McConnell to be party leader?
No.
Dang it, you're too fast. Okay.
Let me get my questions.
The Supreme Court did not rule on Roe v. Wade last Monday. It'll probably come out this Monday, hopefully. Do you support abortion rights coming back to the states?
Well, I am pro-life.
Okay.
And that pretty well sums it up. I also prefer that issue be resolved by the states under the
Right.
10th Amendment, 9th and 10th Amendments. That's my personal preference. If I am forced to vote on in the United States Congress, I will vote pro-life. But I really prefer this be a states' rights issue, and certainly an elected legislator or congressional issue as opposed to an appointed for life dictatorial judge issue. The people who make these policies are supposed to be accountable to the public, and judges, federal judges appointed for life, are not accountable to the public.
Is the U.S. Department of Education even necessary?
Absolutely not. I've introduced or co-sponsored legislation to abolish it. I don't believe in
Music to
the
my
federal
ears.
government mandating anything concerning K through 12. That is uniquely a state responsibility. Cities, counties, and states vastly superior on education matters K through 12 than federal bureaucrats in their windowless cubicles in the basement of some nondescript federal edifice.
Federal edifice.
Really good.
And bovine excrement.
word.
Right.
I've learned so much.
Really.
It's amazing though. I want to do a deep dive into the creation of the Department of Education because it really started in the Carter administration purely apparently to get the teacher unions votes.
Well, the purpose of the Department of Education at the federal level from a political standpoint is to make it more difficult for the people to be able to have control over their child's education. You know, if you're a citizen, it's a lot easier to get a hold of a mayor or a city councilman or a city board member or a superintendent or even a legislator, state board member, and a governor than it is the president of the United States or a United States senator or a United States congressman. So they're trying to centralize all this in a faraway place where the special interest groups with all of their political power can wield disproportionate influence over policy and away from the regular citizens where this responsibility ought to lie.
Follow-up question to that. Biden recently said that he was going to tie federal lunch money and funding to schools to a transgender non-discrimination.
Do you even need
policies.
to ask me the
I just
question
want it on
that?
record. I just want it on record. I mean,
Okay.
we're literally
It's another bad idea by Joe Biden.
using kids and their
lunch money. We're bullying them. We're taking. We're saying we're going to take your
barter.
lunch money if
Look,
you don't use the right program.
I mean, that
It is a
bullying.
part of the push to impose amoral values on the people of the United
Mm-hmm.
States of America rather than moral values. And, you know, I hit a hornet's nest when I pointed out to all those liberals and said, look, one of the reasons that we have these killings at schools is because amoral values have been eroding away moral values.
Right.
If we teach the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If we teach one of the commandments that says, thou shalt not kill, that and people absorb that they're going to be less likely to do these things. When I was a kid, we had far better moral values. Okay, we did. I would take a gun to school with my hip waders or chest waders after going duck hunting. All this would be in the trunk of my car, and we had no school shootings that I'm aware of. Maybe there was one someplace over my first 20 years of human existence, but I can't recall a single school shooting. I'm talking about where more than one person, like 5, 10, 15 are killed. It just didn't happen because we had better moral values back then. But now you've got the Democrats and their policies eroding moral values, and no one should be surprised that if you don't have respect for life, that life gets taken so easily by so many of these different people who are heinous in what they do.
Well, we got to roll.
No,
Sorry.
no,
We do.
no.
Yes, we do.
We
Check the
promise.
time.
No, we have 2 minutes.
No, that's out the door.
No, we have 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes.
One.
Go
Okay,
for
One
it.
ready.
minute. You got 1 minute. 1 minute. Hurry.
What's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Gosh, that is a hard one. I really like Patton. And one of the reasons I like Patton is because my father was a combat engineer in Patton's Army in World War II.
Oh,
So that's
cool.
pretty cool. I really like The Patriot, which is about the Revolutionary War. That was great. Gettysburg is also a great movie. That two film series. There are a lot of tremendous movies, but I tend to focus on history and heroism.
What's your favorite kind of music?
Oh, classic rock.
No way.
Okay. All right.
Way.
So favorite
he was
classic
around
rock
when the-
band.
when
then.
Give me
Who
the
would that
Beach
be?
When it was
Boys.
modern.
Okay.
What?
Okay.
What's your favorite color?
My favorite color, green,
Mine too.
because that's new life.
I don't know.
Y'all-
I just like it.
Just like, there she is. We got to go. I
Okay,
told you.
Stephanie. Okay.
All right.
All right, you going to do the wrap up then? Wrap it
No,
up. Wrap it up.
thank you so much for joining us today. This was actually a ton of fun, and I hate that we got cut off, but I love the baseball stories. We're going to have to tune in and watch Mo Brooks in the congressional baseball game. Find us on 1819news.com. You can find us on Facebook and Gab and Spotify. Watch along and give us some thumbs up and some stars. And tune in again next week. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, one final point. If
What?
you're a conservative, vote on June 21st. If you're a
Oh.
liberal, vote on Wednesday, June 22nd.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us
My
today.
pleasure.